Good morning, students. I'm Miss Wade, and today we are going to be learning about African geography. I'm a 7th grade social studies teacher at Georgetown K-8. We are going to start off by reviewing the 5 major economic terms that we look at every single time we discuss economics. The 3 main economic questions: market economy, command economy, mixed economy, and we are going to take a glance at the economic continuum. Let's go ahead and step back for a moment and let's talk about my expectations for this lesson. I expect you to complete work independently. I expect you to take notes during the lesson. You will use them. You do need them. And I need you to be ready to use what you just learned. You will need 3 sheets of paper and a pen or a pencil. Do not worry if it's a pen or a pencil. No, it does not matter what color. If you only have a crayon, I'm okay. As long as you can write notes, we're good. All right, the standard that we're going to be looking at today is analyze different economic systems. All right, we are going to cover all 3 pieces of this standard, which include compare traditional command and market economies and how they answer those 3 economic questions. Explain that countries tend to have a mixed economy. We're going to talk about why it is called a mixed economy and it's not either command or market. And compare and contrast the economic systems of specifically South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya. My goal for the lesson is for you to be able to explain the 3 main economic systems, there we go, and compare and contrast the economic systems of South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya, and where they happen to fall on that economic continuum. I know some of you are going, what is the economic continuum? Don't worry, I'm not throwing you out there on your own. We will get there. All right, the first thing we are going to do is you're going to take your first sheet of paper. We are going to make a foldable for you to take notes on. You're going to take your plain sheet of paper. You're going to fold it hot dog style. You are going to fold it 1/3 of the way through and 1/3 of the way through. Make sure you crease it. That's how you get your boxes. When you open it back up, you're going to have 6 boxes for you to put the labels into. All right, here's the thing. Some people cannot handle making a foldable. It's too complicated. Either way, draw 6 boxes onto your paper. Please remember to leave room that you're going to be able to put notes in there. That's why they need to be big size boxes if you're drawing them. All right, so the labels that I need you to put into those boxes are going to be the 3 economic questions: market economy, command economy, mixed economy, economic continuum, and an illustration, because I always feel like it's important to draw out what you're talking about. Because if you get that mental image stuck in your head, when it comes time for a test or it comes time for you to remember the information, it'll just pop right up. All right, remember, if you are not done folding your paper or labeling your paper, it's okay. Just hit pause. Take all the time you need to do that, and then come back and hit play when you're ready. All right, we are going to start with the 3 economic questions and market economy. What are the 3 economic questions? What are those? Why do we need them? We always have to look at the 3 questions that all economies answer. They are what to produce, how to produce, and for whom we are producing something. All economic systems tend to replace those differently. They answer those questions differently. You determine what kind of economic system you have based on how they answer these questions. That's why they're important. So the first type of economy we're going to look at is market. All right, in a market economy, what you really need to know is the consumers are who answers those 3 questions. They are what drive the economy. In a market economy, it is chosen, the buyers and the sellers choose what goods and services they are going to produce, how they're going to produce them, and whom they are making them for. There is little to no government interaction in a market economy. The real goal in a market economy is no government interactions. All right. Oh, let me go back for a moment. Please, if you need more time to write down the definition, which is all I'm asking you to put in your box, So for the first box, you're going to write down the 3 questions. For your second box that says market economy, you're going to write down the definition. If you need more time, please remember to pause and take as much time as you need and then come back. All right, the next 2 that we are going to work on is command economy and mixed economy. In a command economy, the important thing that you need to know is that the person that makes all of the decisions, or the unit that makes all of the decisions, is the government. The government controls the production. They can control who they're producing it for. They control how it's produced. They control absolutely all decisions in a command economy. So here's the thing. Market economy and command economy, we know that one is controlled by the people, which is market, and one is completely directed by them. However, and in a command, the government makes all of the choices. The problem is that in the world presently, there is no economy that is a pure command or a pure market economy. It is really, really hard to find a government that can adhere to just one of those. So what you actually end up with in most countries is our next term, which is mixed economy. Most countries have some characteristics of a command and some characteristics of a market, which is how you get a mixture, which is called a mixed economy. Of course, one is usually closer to one side or the other. That's where that economic continuum is going to come in, and we're going to talk about it. Yes, I know, it's a whole new term. It's something that we're thinking about, but it's an important way for you to visualize how a country is dominating what they are doing. How are they making those decisions? Does that put them closer to market? Does that put them closer to commands? This is why we use the economic continuum, and that's what we're learning about next. Remember, if you're not done, please take the time to pause and finish your notes. You'll need them later. All right, so an economic continuum. This is a little wordy. It says the definition is the range of an economic system is measured on a continuum. Based on a country's actions, they move more toward command or more toward market. So the thing that you have to know about that is when you're thinking about a continuum, I want you to picture a number line in your head. You know, to move on a number line, you have to add or subtract something. The same is true for an economic continuum. Where a country falls on an economic continuum is based on a list of factors, which we'll talk about in just a little bit, and it determines, say, their unemployment rate is really low. That's going to move them more toward market. Say they have very little privately held business. That means that's owned by the people. So that's going to move them to command. So where a country falls on that economic continuum all depends on their actions for their overall economy. It's kind of an interesting adventure. All right, so once I told you that last box was going to be for your illustration, and we've done just a very basic illustration of the 3 types of economic systems. You have market, mixed economy, and command economy. There's one that was not mentioned here. Yes, I know it's missing, but we didn't need that term really to get to the meat of this lesson. The one that is missing is called a traditional economy, and I know all of my 7th graders would be shooting their hands up in the air going, Miss Wade, you forgot traditional economy. So the reason that I didn't put it in there is we really didn't need it for this lesson, but a traditional economy is any economy in which the people do exactly what their parents did, what their grandparents did, what their grandparents did before them, their great-grandparents did before their grandparents. So if their whole family had been farmers for hundreds of years, they would be a farmer. Not only would they be a farmer, they would use the same kind of tools and instruments in farming that their grandparents and parents used. It's all about keeping tradition. That's why it's called a traditional economy. It also uses bartering, and that's the other key to a traditional economy. All right, so if you are not done, that's okay. That is not a problem at all. Please remember to pause, finish taking your notes, finish drawing your version of an illustration. It doesn't have to be this one. I just put this one up there because that's how my brain sees it. If your brain sees it differently, that's fine. All right, we're moving in to the economic systems of specifically Africa. All right, what we are going to do is we're going to take out our second piece of paper. You are going to divide it into 3 sections. One is going to be for South African economy, one's going to be for Nigerian economy, and one's going to be for Kenya's economy. Under each one, because we're going to answer these questions for each of these countries, I need you to write down types of economy, the goods produced there, leading exports, GDP per capita, which I'll explain what that is in a minute, literacy rate, and the unemployment rate. All right. Please take the time to pause if you need more time to write down these questions and create your organizer. That's okay. All of us write at different paces. When you're done writing, resume the video, and I'll be here. All right. We are going to start with the South African economy. It is a technologically advanced economy with some government control, like not a lot of government control, just enough to make sure that everybody's doing things legally. One of the strongest economies in the region, it is a mixed economy, which is closer on that continuum to market. Goods produced. They tend to produce things from mining, so platinum, diamonds, and gold. They also assemble cars, machinery. They produce textiles, which is fabric or cloth, iron, steel, chemicals, and fertilizer. The leading exports actually are those things that they mine and machinery and equipment. So those things that they mined were, once again, gold, diamonds, platinum, and other minerals. GDP per capita is $9,800 a year per person. Here's how you need to think about that. GDP per capita is like your yearly paycheck for each person. That means the GDP, which is the gross domestic product, is how much a country makes overall for the entire country. You can think of that like this country made $400 billion a year this year. That's their GDP. However, GDP per capita is how much each person in a household was allotted to allegedly make. So think about that. That's not $9,800 a month. That's $9,800 for the whole year. That doesn't seem very high by the standards for us that you live in the U.S. Maybe it's enough, but if you divide that by 12, it might not go a long way, because when you're doing it by per capita, you're thinking about how much do they make a month? How do they meet everything they need? All right, literacy rate. Okay, so there's something really important about GDP you need to know. If a country has a reasonably high literacy rate, that means anybody over the age of 12 that can read and write. Literacy rate is the number of people in a country over the age of 12 that can read and write. The higher the literacy rate, the higher a country's GDP. They tend to mirror each other. Why is it important to read? There's a really good answer already on the bottom of the screen, and I can hear my own students shouting out in my head. It's because the unemployment rate is needed. The more you can read, the better the type of job you can get, and the more employed the people in your country become. So those three are all interlinked. GDP, literacy rate, and unemployment rates all feed into each other. So if we look at South Africa, we're going to notice that the GDP per capita was 9,800. For the males, 95, almost 96% of males can read in that country. 93% of females can read, and the unemployment rate is 24%. That's a little high. That might be that factor when we're looking at economic continuum later that moves them back over just a little bit. All right, so if you have finished your notes, which should look exactly like this going down your paper under your South Africa column, I would like you to move on with me. If not, remember to pause, finish your notes, and move on when you're ready. All right. Next, we're going to do Nigeria. All right, so the thing about Nigeria is it has a really poorly organized economy, and that's because it had a very long period of mixed military dictatorship And when that was in place, the dictator said exactly what was going to happen. He let his friends come into office so they would steal government funds, and it was kind of a corruption and a corrupt kind of situation. That means the people didn't get everything they needed because the dictator didn't make sure that the economy was meeting the needs of everyone. He made sure it met the needs of a few. They're now trying to reorganize with more private enterprise, which means the people can own businesses. Woohoo! Remember, people owning businesses moves you more toward market. They want to take advantage of the world oil market, and they currently have a mixed economy, but they're kind of in the middle of that economic continuum. Goods that are produced there, their main ones are oil and petrochemicals. Okay, there's some other countries out there like that. If you think about Venezuela and you think back to 6th grade and what you were learning, Venezuela is a perfect example of that. If you go all the way back to 6th grade and jog your mental things, remember the biggest export of Venezuela was oil, but it also caused the most problems for Venezuela because it caused all of its environmental issues. So that's something to think about as we're looking at Nigeria. All right, so oil's their leading export. Let's go down and look at their GDP. Okay, so we just looked at Africa. Sorry, I keep trying to say South America. South Africa. It was $9,800 per person per year. Okay, when we look at Nigeria, the GDP, which is the amount, GDP per capita, which is the amount one person makes for an entire year, is $2,400. 24. So if you divide that by 12, that's $200 a month. That means somebody is making $200 a month. They're probably working 30 to 40 hours a week, but they're only making $200 a month to meet their daily needs or the daily needs of their family. Let's see what might be feeding into that. If we drop down, remember I told you there are 3 things that are intertwined. Literacy rate directly affects GDP, which directly affects sometimes unemployment. But the 2 that are most linked are GDP and literacy rate. When we look at the literacy rate, only 69% of males can read and 49% of females in that country. Remember, that's anybody over the age of 12 who can read or write with fluency is how you get the literacy rate. So in the whole country, only 70% of males can read and right at 50% of females can. Unemployment rate. 4.9%. 4.9%. That is much lower than what we were looking at in South Africa. South Africa's unemployment rate was 24%. So more people are working, but when they're working, they're making less money. And some reasons why, this is when I shout out, somebody tell me why they're making less money. So I guess that'll have to be me. They're making less money because those people are not highly skilled. Highly skilled means that you have more education. So when you get more education, they pay you more money. With a literacy rate of 69% for males and 50% for females, you are not going to make a lot of money. You're going to be what they called that unskilled labor pool. So they're going to pay you the least they can possibly pay you. So that's part of the reason that they're only making $2,400. A lot more people, about 20% more people are working, but they're working like manual labor jobs. Like they're probably mining that oil or gathering that oil or helping produce those petrochemicals to ship out. All right, so that pretty much sums up the concept of Nigeria. The only other thing that I would point out is the education for females might tend to be lower because fewer of them read. When we talked previously about government, or you had talked anything about government previously, we were talking about Nigeria tends to not make sure that they tend to see the world very divided between male duties and female duties. So there's what they call a gender gap. The gender gap is a difficult thing because women do not always have the same access to education, so they don't get the ability to read. So that might be one of the reasons that the literacy rate is lower. And overall, that might be one of the reasons that the GDP per capita is lower. All right, so if you are ready to move on, absolutely fantastic. If you are not, that's okay. pause, finish these notes at your own pace in that Nigeria section that you created, because I want you to answer all of these questions. Yes, it's okay if you sum it up, but get the really important stuff into your organizer. All right, we're going to move on to our final country. I know you're excited, so am I. Kenya, woohoo! We are going to look at Kenya's economy. Kenya is the economic and financial transport hub of Africa. It has a growing entrepreneurial middle class, which will be really important when we're looking at where the economic continuum and how everybody falls there. Through its economic development is threatened by weak government and corruption. So the corruption in the government affects its move toward that market economy. So it might fall somewhere between the center point, which is mixed economy, and toward market just a little bit. All right, so goods produced. The main things that this country produces, they almost border on that traditional economy that we touched on earlier, are agricultural products and livestock. That means traditionally, this country's people have been farmers who have managed crops and cattle. Their leading exports are tea, horticultural goods, coffee, petroleum products, fish, and cement. So all things that are produced from the earth. On a farm are produced from the earth. Like cement, you would mine the minerals needed for cement. So that's awesome. We'll notice that their GDP per capita is 3,400, so it's just a little bit higher than Nigeria's was, but it's still much lower than South Africa's. If you look down, you will notice that 81% literacy rate and 74.9% for females can read. Males is 81%, females is right at 75%, right at 75%. The alarming part of this entire thing is when you look at the bottom, the unemployment rate is 40%. In 2013, it had a 40% unemployment rate. The reason that that's listed for 40% is they do what's called a census. I know we have to do those this year as well, and that's where they measure how, if people are working, how things are growing, and that's where that number came from. All right, so let's talk about this. The GDP per capita is higher than Nigeria, but we also notice that the literacy rate is higher, but it is lower than Africa, than South Africa. But we also notice that its literacy rate is lower than South Africa. So that might lead into that. So if we were, when we look at this, they're making probably around right at $300 a month instead of $200 a month. That's a little better. It's still not possibly meeting all the needs of that family. Some other reasons that unemployment rate might be so high is if we look at the type of things that they are producing. Agriculture is a very difficult thing. What usually happens is, what if you had bad weather? What if you had a drought? What if you don't have the money to buy new seeds? These are all things that can affect the life of a farmer. It can lead to those things like famine, which then causes unemployment rate. Because once a farmer has maybe 1 season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons of really bad growing time, they might lose the farm, which would affect that unemployment rate. So that's something to think about over time. All right, we are getting ready to move into our final wrap up for the day. Something I need you to do. If you are not done, remember to pause. If you are done, let's keep it moving. Wait, I forgot one thing. I keep talking about this concept of an economic continuum. You do not have to write anything down here. I just wanted you to be able to visually see what an economic continuum looked like and where all these countries fall on the economic continuum. All right, at the bottom, I made a little chart that showed some reasons that would affect how they moved on the economic continuum. So if we're looking, Nigeria, in the very center, you see mixed economy. A mixed economy is right where you kind of got some of the command and kind of got some of the market. Remember, when you go all the way to the left and you get to command economy, you are looking at a country where the government dominates absolutely everything. Usually those countries have a dictatorship as a form of government, which is why they have a command economy. The closest to a command economy in modern times is most likely Cuba, which is starting to slowly move more toward the center now that Fidel Castro has passed. But under his time of control, they had the closest pure command economy in the world. So now that's something to think about. On the other side, you have pure market economies. Pure market means the people do whatever they want. They make all the economic decisions. There's no government control. That might sound amazing. But here's the thing to think about. When you give up all government control in businesses, those businesses can do whatever they want. There is no one checking the quality of the goods they are making. So if we flash back, say, to like the 1920s, when foods were starting to be produced and things were starting to be created, think about food being manufactured in a factory. Well, back then, the health department wasn't walking through to make sure all that was sanitary. So whatever fell in the mix was in there. You never knew what you were going to get. So moving forward, sometimes government regulation can be helpful in the fact that they're making sure we're getting clean food and medicine that's been tested for us and everything we need to properly support us. So it's not always bad. Government regulation isn't always bad. People just seem to become alarmed when it becomes a lot of government regulation, which is okay. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. All right, so coming down, we're looking at Nigeria. We notice that it has the lowest, I switched those, so sorry. It has the lowest GDP per capita. It should have had the lowest literacy rate. I accidentally swapped those. It has the lowest unemployment rate, but it has a poorly organized government that's just coming out of a dictatorship, which is why it's right in the center. It has reorganized. It has let some private businesses open, so it got to move away from pure command and right to the center of that economic continuum. Kenya is just a little bit further over. That's because their GDP is a little higher. That's because if we go back to our notes, their literacy rate is a little higher. The only thing that keeps them from moving all the way right next to that market is going to be their unemployment rate because it is so high. They get to be in that as a trading hub, they end up trading more goods, which moves them more to the center. They have people trading, not just the government, but they also have government regulations on how they should trade. That's why Kenya is in the center. So it goes Nigeria and then Kenya. And finally, you're going to see South Africa. That's because they are the closest to the market economy on our current economic continuum because they have the highest GDP per capita. So that means the people are making the most money per person per year out of all three of these. And they have the highest literacy rate. And if you'll notice, their unemployment rate falls between the two of the other ones. They also are technologically advanced, and they are letting others grow. The government has very little control. They're relinquished some of those controls that they are doing, and they're trying to let the people make the decisions. That's why they're the closest to market. All right, moving forward, we're going to sum up with our last activity. Economic systems, reflective writing. Once again, I know writing might not be your favorite thing. I can hear the mental groans from here. However, writing about a concept that you just learned about is a great way to get it pouring out of your brain and onto paper, or expressing yourself in a way that will help you remember it later. All right, you will need your final piece of paper. You will need your notes that we just took. So you'll need those types of economics notes. You'll need the organizer that we just took, and your last piece of paper, because we are going to write down our writing prompt. Ready? Let's go. All right. Please answer the writing prompt below in one paragraph. For me, that is 5 to 8 sentences for a middle schooler. I know, somebody's going, what about 3 to 5? What about 3 to 5? Depending on how your teacher likes it, but most middle school students should be able to write at least 5 sentences for a paragraph. I would also like you to use races. Some of you are like, what is that? What is that? The others are you like, Again, we have to use races. So for those of you that do not know what that is, I'm going to go through what it is. And then at the final step, we're going to read the writing prompt together. While I am reviewing races, please feel free to write the writing prompt on your last sheet of paper. So, races. The first step to races is restate the question. Put the question in your own words. So, if the question is compare and contrast the types of economic systems of Kenya and Africa, you could say something like, the economic systems of Kenya, South Africa, and Nigeria are, that might be an easy opening sentence. It's probably not as detailed, but it's an easy opening sentence. Answer the question. Use the notes that we just took. Tell me, what are they? Are they all the same? Are they all market economies? Are they all command economies? Are they all mixed economies? That's something to look at. So your sentence might look something like, the economic systems of Kenya, Africa, and Nigeria are all mixed economies. That might be your first sentence of your paragraph. Wow. All right. Cite the evidence. Prove it to me. Prove to me why they have that kind of an economic system. Tell me about it. Tell me what they trade. Tell me what they're selling. Tell me what their literacy rate is. Tell me how much a person makes per year in that country. Those are the citation facts that you're trying to use. So to do that, you would say, according to my notes, in Kenya, a person makes $2,400, around $2,400 a year. That is their GDP per capita, something like that. You're putting those facts that we learned into your own words. Take the facts that we learned and put them into pull them out, use them to support the argument that you're making. Next, you are going to explain your answer. Explain it. Don't just leave me hanging. Don't just quote two facts. Don't give me an opening sentence, quote two facts, and then leave me there. I need you to finish it off. That's the important part. I need you to explain why you chose those facts, why this matters, how to sum that up. Finally, that is the final step, is sum up your ideas. You might have an amazing introduction where you restated and answered the question. You might have two great facts where you cited from your notes. You might have explained yourself, but make sure you sum up all the ideas from the entire paragraph in that final sentence. That's called a concluding sentence, and they're important everywhere. Yes, social studies too. All right. Finally, we are going to read the writing prompt together. Compare and contrast the types of economic systems of Kenya, South Africa, and Nigeria. Well, let's think about that writing prompt for a minute. What does compare mean? Any ideas? I hear mentally everyone shouting different ones. And the thing that you need to think about is compare. What are their similarities? How are they similar? Contrast. What might that mean? Mentally shout it out in your head. I'll give you a second. Shout it out at the TV. I don't care which one. All right. Oh, I know. Contrast. Contrast means the differences. That means give me how they are alike, how they are different. You're going to give me how Kenya, Africa, and Nigeria economies are alike and how they are different. That is what you are putting into paragraph form. You are going to use races. You are going to hopefully write at least 5 sentences as your answer. You're going to use your notes to support your evidence. And then you're going to sum up all of your ideas. All right, so I think we have covered it all. If you need more time to write down the writing prompt, please remember to pause and take as much time as you need. If you need to write down the races box because you need to know what that looks like, please do that too. Finally, thank you so much for learning with me today. Once again, my name is Miss Wade. I teach 7th grade at Georgetown K-8, and today we learned about African economies. Thank you so much for learning with me.